By the way, if you want to share out your screen too on that. All right, guys, we will get started momentarily. I think we had like 50 folks that are registered for this, and Cynthia and Dom and Elijah and Robert are the first. They are the early arrivers, early adopters in this place. Thank you very much for joining us today. We'll get started in just a minute. So the icebreaker question of the day is, number one, where are you from? And number two, what is your hobby, or what do you like to do when you're not working? I know why I'm setting this up for Joe, because I've seen some of the stuff. In fact, Joe, can you still share out? If I'm sharing out, I got to change for you, right?
You got to change. Wait, when we put up,
I got to do multiples, right? So I can stop, and you can share out for a minute, because this will blow your mind. I know what Joe likes to do in his free time. Go ahead, Joe. You can share out. And where are you from, Joe? Where are you out of? You can put it in the chat.
I'm in Central Illinois.
Central Illinois. I'm from Woodstock, Maryland.
Right, share in a moment. Here we go. This will keep everybody paying attention.
Yeah, there you go. So I'm from Woodstock, Maryland, and my go-to is guitar stuff and music. You can see mine. We got one of them there. Look at this, man. This is crazy. And that's real deal, right? You didn't doctor
that, did you? That's real. That's in the North Woods of Minnesota.
North Woods of Minnesota. Hence, stay away from the North Woods of Minnesota. So where are you from, and what do you like to do when you're not working? So we know that that Joe is a photographer. That is for sure. I knew, because I saw some of the stuff you got in your presentation here, Joe. Good stuff. Where's this out of?
We got one or two in there.
That is awesome. So we'll get started in just a minute. This is a zero trust adoption. Look at that, man. See, he's a real deal photographer.
Let's see, where else was I?
All right, you got another one for us? So let us know where you're from and what do you like to do when you're not working. Joe's a photographer. That's a beautiful picture, man.
It's coming up, but it's kind of a little fuzzy. I'm gonna restart it.
Looks like your camera needs glasses.
That one does. Yep.
All right, we'll get cooking in a minute. This is zero trust architecture adoption in the federal space. So there we go. Hiking and waterfalls from Sarita. We like that. From Atlanta, Georgia. Love that, Sarita. So where are you from, and what do you like to do? Look at that thing. Can you believe that? Can you imagine ever taking a picture like that? I cannot. I was amazed when I got a picture of a water spout when I was down in the Keys. That is awesome, man. So we will get cooking. Where am I? Right here. Share. Can I share? You got to stop sharing.
All right, I'm out. Goodbye.
All right, you should work now. Should work. Where's my sharing at? Boom. All right, there we go.
I'm out.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Now we're getting back to business. We'll
Cool.
get cooking in just a minute. We're just doing a little bit of an icebreaker for everybody. We got Joe Norton here. We got Matt Sweet, and I'm Dave Lowe. I'm your host for today, and we'll get cooking in just a minute as we let folks land in this place. We appreciate you guys joining us today. And I'm going to open up with, where's the polls? Zoom changed things, man. I'm telling you. All right. So why in the world did you guys decide to join us today for the zero trust architecture in the federal government? Are you in the hot seat for implementing zero trust? You're trying to get your head around the executive orders and memoranda. We're going to talk a little bit about that, right, Joe?
Of course we are.
And want to be part of the zero trust dialogue, or my boss made me come. There you go. And you can choose as many as you want. We know there's going to be at least one Weisenheimer choosing that their boss may come. And we'll get started here. We want to welcome all the folks. This is truly an interagency briefing. Over the course of time, we have had responses from all these different agencies on this topic. It is a hot topic because I do believe it affects everybody. Does it not, Joe?
It affects the entire world of our federal government, our civilian agencies, our Defense Department, and all commercial economic operations around the world.
It does indeed. So we want to welcome you guys. I did to honor NASA today. I need my space mug, just so everybody knows. Got that today for my coffee. All right. Quick disclaimer. This is not affiliated or endorsed by any agency, and your participation as government folks is not an endorsement to buy from anybody, including DivIHN, and it is being recorded. So here we go, Joe. This will be the best briefing ever. If ZTA minimum viable implementation is there, who ended that? Did I end that? That was weird. Kind of ended itself, didn't it? All right. Well, there we go. We'll do that. So ZTA minimum viable implementation. Catherine from State says, I can understand what to look for when procuring IT solutions that include zero trust models. Love that one, okay. Catherine. Carl from the VA, explain why zero trust is so important. Why are there no other competing alternatives considered? Great question, Carl. Sarita, who was from Atlanta, I think, helps VA reduce the security vulnerabilities that could impact veterans. Absolutely. We want to make sure we don't want to impact the veterans, right, Sarita? And Thomas from FDA, I get an objective, useful information rather than a solicitation. Absolutely. Right, Matt? We're no solicitation, no solicitizing here.
Correct.
That's right. We're not going to do that. Perilous from FAA. It starts on time. We started on time. The message is clear, hopefully, and it will end on time, Perilous. It'll be the best briefing ever because we actually did that. Letitia from HHS, you learn anything, just anything new. So that that Joe is a great photographer. That's not what you learn. It's new, but that's new and you learn. All right. Janie from Ed, presented in a way that non-IT specialists can understand and relate. I hope that's true, Janie. And Scott from USDA offers CEUs. Yes, we can manage that as well. We can do that. All right. So a couple things that they want to address. If you want to address anything, make sure it gets in the chat, or you can raise your hand. We will unmute you or put in the Q&A. We'll make sure we get to it. Actionable information on addressing federal mandates on zero trust. Addressing all mandates, security issues. Mandates a big thing, right? Resources and how to get it done. How agencies to be compliant with the zero trust initiatives. Love that. We'll address that. What is the impact of ZTA on legacy systems? You're going to hit that on, Joe? You're going to talk about that a little bit? All right. Is there a reference, architecture, and best practices document? As a matter of fact, there is. We have some of that we'll be handing out momentarily. Alternative security architectures other than zero trust. And I don't think we're going to be doing that one. But what is truly meant by zero trust strategy? Love it. And we will be getting through all of those. So if you have anything else that you would like us to pay attention to, or you want information from Joe, put it in the chat. We'll make sure you get that gets answered. We're going to give you introductions, what it is, what it's not, mandates. People were asking for that, Joe, so we're going to give it to them. Agencies are expected to make progress, and we're only talking about how long now?
Oh, we're running out of time.
We're running out of time. And the pitfalls and traps, and continuing the conversations and meeting those goals. Session docs. Let me make sure I have these handy. I think I have this right here that I can pop in for everybody. Session docs right there for everybody. So you can download that. It includes the presentation and all the rest of the supporting information that we're going to be covering here. And we may update that. If you ask for something, we're going to do our best to give it to them. Right, Matt? That's what we're going to do. Speaking of you, Matt, tell us about DivIHN and what you guys are all about and why you're here.
Excellent, Dave. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for your time today. So not to be too salesy, right? But DivIHN is an 8A company, IT firm that specializes in custom software development, enterprise architecture, Salesforce implementation, and of course, cybersecurity. We have been providing these services for over 20 years, mostly in the commercial space. We most recently joined into the government sector, and we're looking forward to bringing, our knowledge and expertise to that sector as we have to the commercial sector. So thank you very much again for being here.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. And we'll talk a little bit later about that as well. Joe Norton is in the house. And like I said earlier, Joe, you look like a professor here.
Well, I have taught in a couple of universities along the way.
Yeah, that's what I figured. You look like one. All right. And you can see all of the accomplishments in addition to being a great photographer on the non-professional side. On the professional side, you can see that Joe is a specialist when it comes to cybersecurity, and he does work with DivIHN as a special advisor. But you can also see that he has a lot of experience in different places, including the Kellogg School of Management and lecturing there. That's probably when you were a little bit of a professor, I believe. But we really appreciate your insight on this. Wow, just a lot of information there as far as your qualifications and capabilities there. If you would like to participate in this in the docs, I just put that in there in the chat. And if you would like to ask questions, we like interaction, right, Joe?
We certainly do.
Yep. And then if we know, we're going to answer it. If we don't know, we're going to find the answers. How about that? And you can raise your hand. You can put it in the Q&A. I'll do my best to be able to pay attention to the chat. And if you got something that you don't want everybody and their mother to see, send it to matt.sweet@divine.com. We'll pop that up when we have the question times. We're going to do this throughout this. We're going to have, you can just pop open, and if you have something you'd like specific to one of the questions or one of the things that Joe is presenting, please make yourself available. I will make you available for sure in this. So I'm going to get into, there's nothing in the Q&A. All right, let me do this real quick. Zoom has changed the polls. That's all I can say. So where are you on your ZTA journey? Or have you not started yet? Or have you scheduled your readiness assessment? And if you don't know what that is, you probably haven't started, right, Joe?
Probably not.
Probably not. And do you have your ZTA implementation underway? And are you completely fabricating the last answer is that it's fully implemented? Because as far as we know, nobody's done it, right, Joe?
I'm not going to say absolutely not. I don't believe that. I think there's a lot of agencies making progress. I just don't have access to everybody's status reports, so I don't want to say yes or no there.
All right. Well, we will go ahead and get started. And just so you know, once again, you can pop stuff in here, raise your hand. If you have a question, let us know. So how do we start the conversation here, Joe, while folks are finalizing this and answering this? Because we only have 35% participation, which is dismal. But go ahead. How do we start the conversation?
How do we start the conversation? Well, if you're looking at the topic of ZTA or zero trust architecture and cybersecurity in general across all of our federal agencies, et cetera, you might be like this eagle, you're flying along and then suddenly it's like, whoa, my God, what just flew by me, right? And you're like looking each way or up and down or left. And maybe you're zeroing in on a target or maybe you're not. We don't know. But anyway, next slide, please.
You betcha. This is so true.
But I will guarantee you, and I'm sure you're all fully aware, that the wolves are at your network perimeter, and they are there every day. And the cyber action that's going on, attacking us, attacking our industries, looking for any advantage that our adversaries and or our competitors and or our allies are looking for, everybody's at your network perimeter. The wolves are at your door.
Always shaking the door, right?
Yep.
Always shaking that. Been that way for a long time. So why are we here?
So back in 2021, Q2, executive order approving our nation's security from the White House came out on May 12th. OMB put out their draft federal strategy for moving our U.S. government towards a zero trust architecture in September 2021. The presidential memorandum NSM-8 and OMB guidance on how to achieve that came out in 2022. ZTA maturity models were issued by CISA in 2023 in April. So the models and architectures and approaches do exist. They've been vetted in the procurement community by GSA, and we're here. It's 2023. We're in Q4. That's where we are today. And the completion target from the executive order from 2021 was targeting to make significant progress in cybersecurity modernization in our federal agencies, including ZTA, by the end of fiscal 2024. Okay. Next slide, please. So the executive order itself had many, many components to it. Okay. Policy for more secure cyberspace, removing barriers to threat information, modernizing our cybersecurity, enhancing supply chains, software supply chains, safety review boards for cyber, standardizing the playbook for vulnerabilities and incident responses, detection of vulnerabilities, and investigation and remediation, okay, as well as addressing outside of the civilian agencies, all of our national security systems. Our focus today is specifically on zero trust architecture within item number 3, modernizing federal government cybersecurity. Next, please. So within that, the focus has been from the beginning to adopt best practices, advance towards zero trust architecture over the multi-year period, accelerate security cloud services adoption, centralize and streamline access across agency for cybersecurity data, and drive the analytics so that we know what the priorities are for managing cybersecurity risks, and most specifically to provide funding to invest in technology and personnel to match these goals.
And just a little bit of money out there, right?
There's more than a little bit of money.
That's right.
So on some of the other, we'll cover the budget issues later, a little farther on. But anyway, OMB and the draft strategy for moving forward, specific to addressing zero trust security goals by the end of fiscal year 2024. The focus was on identity and has been on identity, devices, protection, networks, applications, and data, enterprise-wide identity, multi-factor authentication, complete within agency and inventory of every device for detecting and responding to incidents, encrypt at rest and encrypt in transit your information movement, and any and all applications within your agencies should act as if they are internet connected and be tested for external vulnerability reporting, and provide a pathway for data protection, categorization, and logging and sharing. These are the 5 specific goals for zero trust. Next, please.
Yep. And so part of that is that both sides need to make sure that they're who they're supposed to be, right? Isn't that part of what zero trust is as well?
Well, zero trust, let me follow the flow here, but zero trust is all about not trusting anyone at all. And zero trust says when somebody logs in, we don't know who they are. They have to go through a verification sequence, but we'll address this more as we go forward. Anyway, we've been asked before, who's affected? Everybody's affected. Every civilian agency has been specifically addressed in the White House's memorandums. And in the beginning, there were a number of timelines. I'm not going to publish every timeline over 4 years, but this was just a snapshot from back in January 19th in 2022. Very specific timelines for each agency and the agency heads and the national manager for NSA, so on and so forth, were to notify, provide, review, develop, publish, prioritize, etc. There were specific deadlines beginning in 2022 to make progress towards hitting the goals for zero trust architecture. Now, where are you today? We, on the outside, do not have privy to your progress within any one of your agencies. However, somebody in your agency knows what these targets are and what your performance and progress has been. So what is zero trust? You can reference NIST special publication 800-2007. It specifically states that zero trust provides a collection of concepts and ideas to minimize uncertainty in enforcing accurate, least privilege per request access decisions in all of your information systems and services and network connectivity in the face of a network viewed as compromised. So what it means is that it's a philosophy and approach to implementing your security governance policies, goals, and systems to enforce least privilege per request access decisions. This is the most important part.
And what do you mean by least privilege? What does that mean?
That means if you are requesting access as an end user within your agency or outside your agency to any one of your assets, whether that be a database, whether that be an application, whatever it may be, it's that you only are granted the access you need for that specific evolution, not one login, I have access to everything within the agency.
Right. And we've seen that happen, right? Where it's by role, right? You have a role.
It's role-based, and role-based has been around for,
For a long
as long as
time.
it's always been, sailing the ark. Okay. So role-based access is one of the primary architectural goals for any cybersecurity architecture. However, over time, this has always been weakened, and not only in the commercial sectors, but in our government sectors, et cetera. I mean, verification is very, very simple. You guys are all out there. You're in the real world just like we are. Okay. It doesn't matter that you're working within a federal agency or not. You're a human being in the United States. You read the newspapers, you know what's going on. So one of the latest breaches that made the news was the casinos in Las Vegas. That was specifically an access request failure. Now, it was social engineered. Somebody called up and had an employee name. He called the help desk and said, hey, I forgot my password. Could you reset it? They didn't verify the connection point. They didn't verify the person. It was a phone call. They assumed it was the right person, and he gave them a new password. And from that point forward, the entire, all of the systems within the casinos in Las Vegas were compromised. That's an example of the failure of verification of an access request. It's that simple.
And that goes, it's not just systems, it's also procedures, processes, and just.
Well, yeah, let's go forward a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
So when you break it down, when you talk about zero trust, it's about everything in your environment. So what is zero trust? First is to start with what it's not. It's not new. Zero trust models were first presented for implementation in 2010. There's no such thing as a single commercial off-the-shelf product or solution. It's a combination of governance and approach and tools and rules that you put into your systems for verifying access. It's certainly not a solution for zero-day vulnerabilities. Zero trust has nothing to do with your vulnerabilities, okay? And 100% cloud adoption does not equal zero trust. You can go to all of your cloud service providers that your agencies are using, and you need to test, are they implementing zero trust? There's requirements within the modernization goals for the supply chain as well. And you know what? Zero trust does not make you recovery ready. So if you're breached, zero trust is not going to fix what happened. Okay.
That's good to know too.
Next.
And I love this.
We start with a philosophy and a culture. You have to believe that you have to test everyone coming through the gate. There's a reason why when you drive up to a secure facility to go to work in the morning, you're stopped at the gate and you're asked to provide your credentials. And your credentials are matched by someone to your face, et cetera, so on and so forth. And there's a check to see that you are an authorized person to gain access before you're given access. That's the basis of zero trust, except it's for your information technology systems. So the core principles: secure your devices, your applications, your network, your data, and all of your identities. Again, the focus on identity-centric policy for controlling access. 3 core principles. Ensure all your resources are accessed securely, regardless of location. Now, that's regardless of the location of where those assets are, where they're hosted, whether on-prem, off-prem, cloud, et cetera, as well as the location of the access request. In a secure building, outside a secure building, working from home, it could be overseas in another country. It doesn't matter, regardless of location. Adopt least privilege strategy and strictly enforce the access control. Again, we used to think about having all access, single login. Well, guess what? Single login to all of your assets is, if you're breached, you're breached. If it's a bad access, you've just let somebody into access across your entire network. So the idea of single logins, while it's convenient, is not necessarily secure. And last is inspect and log all traffic. That's a systemic component of zero trust architecture. You must be able to inspect and track and look for patterns. Next, please. So CISA's directives, right? We've already touched on these. Where are you? It's a long journey and a relatively short period of time. So we started in fiscal year 2021, and we're targeting towards the end of fiscal 2022. We're at the end of 2023. So basically, we've got 12 months time frame left to make progress, and hopefully significant progress. Next. So it also includes CISA directives for threat hunting, allowing CISA to do threat hunting or conduct threat hunting activities against your networks, federal, civilian, executive board agencies, without prior authorization from agencies. CISA was granted the ability to do that legally, and quarterly reports to National Security Advisor as well as OMB.
So that means they can essentially hack everything.
Yeah, it's a white hack. White hat hacking, right? So prior to that, we were not necessarily allowing CISA to do that, but the president's agenda does provide that legality for CISA to test your networks and then inform you what they found.
So irrespective of where you are on the path of ZTA, CISA is going to let you know.
They should be auditing your networks and your progress.
All right. Well, with that in mind, let's find out. And we do have a question. We'll make sure we get to that as well. What is your biggest challenge with zero trust? Is it understanding what it is? Hopefully you got a little bit about that. Meeting the memoranda. What's the impact on your agency? Your job role potentially, and finding resources to help with implementation. And we do have a question here. Hold on one sec. It's from VJ. In clinical settings, how much does the ZTA affect bandwidth, speed, etc.? Great question, VJ. It depends on what the solution is that's implemented, right, Joe? But what do you think about that?
It should have zero impact on your bandwidth.
Okay.
I mean, I've spent most of my career. My career began in the military, obviously, and as a consultant, I've actually consulted with a number of your federal agencies as well as some of the non-civilian agencies. And I've seen zero trust approaches, at least privilege, implemented in a number of organizations, and I have not seen any dramatic impact on bandwidth utilization. It just goes with the flow of your bandwidth. Your bandwidth is there, right? And believe it or not, you can automate 90% of the verification of least privilege access control.
So I think maybe what sometimes they're talking about, like presentment of credentials back and forth using a live test or something. I've heard about that too, Joe.
Well, you can test it if you want. You can brute force it when everybody logs in. So it's like looking at email utilization. When we look at, test email utilization and how much capacity do we need, I'm sure that your operations have a pattern of when everybody logs in, and you can see it. It starts at when everybody gets into office, gets their coffee, you stop talking at the cooler, you say hello, you sit down. Let's just say that your start time in the morning is 9 o'clock. So by 9:20, people are logging in. You can see the access requests come in. Okay. And then they drop off. Now, when you go to zero trust, you're still going to see the same focus of it of utilization to say bandwidth for say 1,000 people to log in within 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Or 30,000 people within 40 minutes, that'll happen. You already have that capacity to hit those peak loads. By spreading out with zero trust and least access privilege going on and off, it just spreads it out after that point when you log in. The next peak that you see is usually access requests after lunch.
Mm-hmm.
So we already know those patterns exist. You have the bandwidth to deal with that already today. So I don't necessarily see any significant or any impact on bandwidth utilization by implementing zero trust. After those peak periods, which you're already handling, you start seeing that the access requests the peaks just go down into a valley and they just level off during the day.
All right. And what about legacy systems? We had that question earlier about.
It doesn't matter what system it is. This applies to access requests regardless of the system.
Okay, cool.
And with the difference from a zero trust perspective has more to do with how do you treat your applications. The specific goal we cited earlier in the directives is to treat all applications as if they are internet facing.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right.
So as we're finishing this up for the challenges for the individuals here, tell us what we've seen so far.
Well, implicit trust versus zero trust. Implicit trust is one log on, single log on. Hey, you log in once, I trust you for the day, or I trust you for the week. That's ridiculous. Zero trust says I trust nobody. We will verify every time. There are challenges, obviously, with other aspects of modernization having to do with moving legacy systems or replacing your on-prem stuff with cloud environments. Okay, that's a challenge unto itself. Does it require massive investments? Yes, it does. But it was been provided for through your budgeting process. Does it include people in training? Yes. The resources, at least the money resources, have been there in the budgets. Okay. Can you trust your suppliers? No. No. 80% of all breaches in any agency occurred through a third party.
Yeah, that's true.
They do. We know this history is out there. You can scan this on Google, for God's sakes. Okay. There's no maturity model, consensus, or target. Well, now there is a maturity model. For a long time, there wasn't. You can see the dates when it was out there. CISA put it out there, and we'll look at those today before we're done. Do you need a multi-year dedicated program office? Well, this is what I was saying in the very beginning. You were going to need this. This is what I said in 2021. I certainly hope you have some sort of cybersecurity modernization program office in place in your agency. Does it involve portfolios of projects and programs and projects? Yes, it's a lot of work. It's a matrix of agency and reporting requirements. True. If you want to defend our federal resources from everyone who's trying to steal stuff from us, stop our way of life, etc., blah, blah, blah. Hey, it's work. It requires coordination and communications. Supply chain, software supply chain, and cloud services have their own level of zero trust and maturity, and they're advancing forward, or they're not going to be on the GSA schedule. Flat networks versus microsegmentation. There was a period of time over the last 30 years where everybody was moving to simplify things and make things easier. So we moved to flat networks. The problem with flat networks is there's only one line of defense. If your agency is running a totally flat network architecture, once it's breached, everything is breached. So modern cybersecurity modernization does call out for microsegmentation of your resources so that there are more and more barriers in the event of a specific targeted breach. No more single sign-on. And you know what? I got to say this, software vendor claims versus reality are always a stretch. Always a stretch. Okay.
And but what about everybody's like, well, I don't want to have to do this multi-factor thing and all that stuff. What about all those people?
Well,
be honest. Be honest.
We either protect our assets or we don't. And I ask people this, and throughout my career with the organizations I've worked with, where I've been embedded as an officer of a company working with extremely large global multinational companies, as an officer of those companies, I would ask my staff members, I would ask all the employees in our companies the same thing. How do you protect your checkbook?
Hmm.
How do you protect your bank account? How do you protect your retirement funds? Do you want single sign-on and flat networks protecting all of your personal critical assets? It's the same thing in our business, and your business is our federal government operations, okay? And it's the same in commercial business. If you don't want to protect your assets, then don't cry when they're stolen.
You don't walk around with C notes hanging out of your pocket.
There you go.
Nope.
There you go. I mean, to me, it's part of employment. Every employee is on the front lines of cybersecurity protection.
That is really an interesting statement, because phishing and just human interaction is part of the biggest issues that we have, right, Joe?
It stuns me still to this day how simple 95% of our breaches that
It's so true.
are the simplest of attack vectors. The totally simplest.
Yeah. And it's smart
I'm
people
going to say
too.
this again. Every employee, every one of you on this call, you are on the front lines. It's not the CISO's problem, or only his problem.
That's right.
It's not security department's problem. It's all of our problems.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things to get the policies out, and whatever the products that are out there that are going to come, right? There's going to be products.
There's tons of products out there you can implement today.
Yeah. So, and
But
I love this.
But by saying that, I want to make sure that I keep repeating that there's no single cut solution. You just can't buy a tool to fix everything. Okay. So going forward, things are never as good as or as bad as they first appear. So yes, there's a lot of doom and gloom. Should there be? No. I mean, you can look at it, you can react. We all have emotional reactions, but things are never as good as or as bad as they first appear. This is just a matter of digging it out and moving us forward.
And it's a fact we're talking about facts of life and the changes that we have.
So what does it involve? Zero trust is dependent on coming to within your agencies, governance and policies, and operational discipline and continuous monitoring. It involves asset management. It involves configuration management. It involves patch management. And most important, it involves user process, machine identity management, and user and process machine access management, and then segmentation of your networks. Now, let me make a point here. Most of the literature, most of the stuff people will try to sell your agencies or to sell a GSA on so that you'll come off the list and use some of their products, et cetera. Most of the consulting organizations in the world, they will tell you it's very simple. It's access management. The industry has coined access management as the thing. I will tell you, I separate it specifically for implementation purposes to identity management and access management. Identity asset management is one thing. Access management is an allowing an identity to gain access. So, one of the challenges I always had as a CTO in organizations and running IT operations for large organizations has always been zombie accounts. People leave, they get fired, they retire, they're contractors, they come on programs, they come off programs. Hopefully your agencies are auditing identities and they're tracking identities, and that the identities actually have a shelf life when you're hired. And then the old way of doing things was you got hired and your identity lived forever, for 100 years. Well, I believe identity should have a shelf life. Identity should have a 1-year termination point, and then every year the identity has to be renewed to check that you're still employed, or you're still a contractor, or what have you. Or maybe it should be every 24 months, but it certainly shouldn't be an endless thing.
Yeah.
Every organization I've ever worked with has always had a problem with zombie accounts. Identity management is separate from access management. Manage your identities closely, and then use those identities to be verified for access. Okay.
So what does DoD tell us for their
Well, DoD was in the vanguard of implementing ZTA long before the zero trust architectures, long before the president's agenda came out. So modernizing information infrastructure, simplify security, consistent policies, data management. It's all about, as I said, machine and people, non-person identities as well as person identities. So ZTA applies for your machine-to-machine access controls.
And that is
Now,
real quick,
what is it?
VJ's asking that question because he's talking about DoD and VHA information sharing with each other. This is what you're talking about, right?
Yes, that's a machine-to-machine request. So if you have an application that you use in one agency and it makes a request to go to another agency's application, that's a non-person identity that has to be verified.
Yep. And what he's saying, why not allow communications behind the so-called secure ZTA without significant barriers? It's still nowhere near implementation yet. You're absolutely right, VJ. And the fact of the matter is, though, making sure those machines are who they say they are, right, Joe?
Yeah.
That's the other part.
They're not being spoofed.
Not being spoofed. And don't think that you can't. It can't happen.
It's happening every day. I mean,
every day.
The new. I'm not inside. I obviously don't see every cybersecurity incident report coming out of the agencies, obviously, and I shouldn't. Okay, but I do see what hits the major news,
and it's never good.
And if it's hitting the major news, and it's hitting the CNN feeds and the Fox feeds, and this whatever feed, if it's hitting the feeds, that's only a small fraction of what's going on in cybersecurity around our world and our federal government and who's attacking us. So please,
so to your point, VJ, hopefully we answered that question, but it's not just logging into one side and logging into the other and then expecting all those to be always secure. What Joe is saying, I think, is what you're saying, Joe, is that you need to validate that on a regular basis.
You need to inventory it and you need to test it as part of your ZTA implementation, and then you need to monitor it, and you should have an auditing process over a timeline. And what does that mean? Every quarter, every 6 months, whatever your agency's governance and policy agreements are, you should test it, just not, and I'm not saying you got to test it every day or every month, but you should verify it in periodically so that you're checking, not just expect, hey, well, we put it in place in 1968, so it's still valid. Okay.
And when was the last time you saw on CNN or Fox News that the agencies did a great job?
Yeah.
Just saying. I know you guys. This is what.
Listen, being in the IT side of the world in an operations in security operations, et cetera, is probably one of the least satisfying and hardest jobs in information technology today. No doubt. I've lived 50 years in information technology. I get it.
Yeah.
But you've asked, are there maturity models out there? Yes, the reference model and architecture maturity models are out here. I'm not going to read every one of these slides. We're actually sending you all of these models. It's on the link. You can download them. So they're out there. Okay, the maturity models exist. This was the DOT original model. Next slide. Challenge, obviously, has been highlighted in those models of moving from concepts to reality. Again, this was the Joint Defense Information Systems Agency and National Security Agency approach on zero trust engineering. Next, please. There is a zero trust maturity model version 2 from CISA out there. It's in our download package for you. You can download it yourself, or you can get it off of Dave's website. And again, the focus is on least privilege. I cannot highlight this enough. It's the principle and the idea that any user, program, or process should only have the bare minimum privilege necessary to perform its function. It works by allowing only enough access to perform the required task and then terminating that access when the task is completed. And you apply it at every level of your systems environment, at users, systems, processes, networks, database, applications, equipment, and devices. So is it complex? Sure. Now, I'm sure any number of you who are on the call today have maybe Project Management Institute PMPs, And if you are, you should recognize this formula: n times n minus 1 divided by 2 is an estimating for complexity and number of connections and network nodes or communications channels, etc. And if you are a PMP and you don't recognize this, I am disappointed in you, because I am a PMP and I happen to know it's on the exam. Okay, to be certified as a PMP, professional project manager. Okay, quickly into budgets, OMB 53 and 300 reporting, portfolios of programs, projects, and projects, etc. Yes. Next, please. Reporting requirements are there. The formats, you all know what these are. These are actual real examples from my experience that I have used in my work. It's there. It all exists. Next. How to do this. This is an old slide. I'm going to say this. I want to introduce you to the itdashboard.gov. I've only displaying this here to show you that over 2011 to 2022, you can plot and track what our federal civilian agency in total budget spending has been. It's increasing. It's a small slope, but those are really big numbers. The fiscal 23 priority spending was $67 million for maintenance and operations and $21 billion for major investments. Next slide, please. I happen to know we just brought this up. The 23 spending was 67, again, 21 million major investments. It's the total snapshot of what's out there. Next slide, please. We know that if we look at the spending so far, that in 2024, there's $60 billion being planned in the budgets across all civilian agencies for development, modernization, and enhancements. Within that $60 billion, that's where your funding for your cybersecurity modernization activities lies, as supplied by your own agencies. And we also went into the dashboard and took a look, and we know that going back to 2021 up until now, within the budgeted line items, you can look at the history on the dashboards. This is publicly available as freedom of information. There has been $4.7 billion over the last several years in budgets for ZTA across all the federal agencies. So we know the money's out there.
That's called out for ZTA, period. It's actually what they put it out for. So there's other stuff that's in there probably that's a subset of the cyber that's not even in that 4.7 billion. So there is money there. Here's an example. You have this too.
Yeah, it's there. So we know the money was there. Okay. Now, just as an example, how do you find this stuff on the dashboard? I just pulled up the State Department. The State Department for 2024 is budgeting, or has a budget request in for allocations for $791 million for development, modernization, and enhancements. The money is there. And if you look at just security and compliance, the total spending for modernization and operations and maintenance, $588 million in security and compliance, and that's total 19% of their entire budget. It's a lot of money. Yes, I've gotten questions in the past. Well, you don't know how much of that's being used. Of course I don't. I only have the access that the dashboard gives us on the public side. But within those pools of money, it's just trying to indicate there's a lot there. Now, another example of knowing that it's being budgeted, this is just another example I pulled up over the weekend from the dashboard. This is the cybersecurity enhancement account for zero trust architecture at the Department of Treasury. They're budgeting in 2024 $16 million for their efforts in zero trust. So do we know what every one of your agencies are doing? No. Do we know that the money is available? It has been made available as promised by the president's agenda? Yes. And I'm hoping that your agencies are using this money wisely and making progress. Previous sessions that we've run on ZTA, we've gotten questions about FIT and TIC, the Trusted Internet Connection Policy, and GSA's Furniture and Information Technology Product. It all remains relevant. This is, Trusted Internet Connection Policy is how to make those internet connections live, and Fit is how you get your personal computers updated and renewed, etc., and furniture as well as other stuff. The Fit web's still out there. It tells you how to do everything. There's no impact to any of those programs. One does not cancel out the other. The Center for Workplace Strategy and Fit is still there, and trusted internet connections still all apply.
What about the CISA?
Well, CISA, it provides guidance just for what it means by a trusted internet connection.
Oh, I didn't know that's what TIC meant. That was a term. That's one of the acronym soup I didn't know, Joe.
Oh, well, there you go.
There you go. Learn something new today.
So my key takeaways for you is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and zero trust adoption will be unique to your agencies depending on how you choose to implement the various components of it. But again, it starts with a philosophy of, yes, we want to do this. It begins with governance. There's plenty of guidance. There's reference architectures, et cetera, and just going through the work one step at a time to make it happen. Where do you go from here? Hopefully, you've already established your scope and your activities, that you already have your strategy formulation in place, and that we're hoping you are well on your way to adoption and implementation, and that anybody can do a status check and say, where are you now?
Well, speaking of where you are now, what do you want to say about that?
Well, this is from the goals. Where should you be? Hopefully, you've been making progress on your enterprise-wide identity management and access controls, and implementing multi-factor authentications. That you've completed your inventory so you know how to detect and respond to incidents, and that you're making progress on your networks and encrypting at rest as well as in transit, and that you're treating all of your legacy systems as if they are internet connected, so that they can be tested for external vulnerabilities and reporting, and that you're providing your data protection pathways with data categorization, logging, and information sharing. This is the progress you should be making.
And as you mentioned before, some of that's on the front end and detecting, making sure that you're supposed to be who you are. And then on the back end saying, did it all work? And if it didn't work, we have the logs to be able to point to.
You have to be able to do the fix to track back and where it is, but it's more than forensics, okay? The whole purpose behind logging, tracking and logging is pattern analysis of your access requests. I'll start there. One of the things you're always looking for, hopefully your security operations are already doing for you, is tracking the patterns of who's logging in, what their pattern of days are, and you can put very easy software controls and looking at your logs to say, hey, identity Joe Norton, he normally his pattern is he logs in at 9 o'clock. And he checks out at 11:30, and he goes to lunch, and he comes back at 1 o'clock. Yep, he took a long lunch. Okay, you can track those patterns with just simple data pattern analysis against your logs. And if, wow, suddenly Joe Norton's attempting to log in 30 billion times at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know it's not Joe Norton. Okay, That's pattern analysis. All right.
Yep. All right, so we also have some guidance from GSA, right?
You can go out to the General Services Administration website. There, you can tab out to it. There, they have a section just for zero trust architecture, and all of the assets GSA has verified to support your way of going there, and how to buy assets, et cetera, or evaluate the vendors. GSA has also published a zero trust architecture document buyer's guide, and that's in our download package for you today.
And that is going right back in here now. All right, so really appreciate that. And we're going to get everybody out of here on time, as it was in the beginning. We said we were going to do that. And let me get this up for everybody so we can actually do this. And I will be doing better with polls the next time I do this. So continuing the conversation, do you want to discuss it with ZTA and your agency? You'd like to discuss something else? Let us know, and when you would like to discuss that. And if you have any additional questions, I know VJ, you had a couple in there. If you let me see if I can find you, VJ. See if he's still here. I don't see VJ. He must have had to bail on us. but I want to make sure anybody that has any other questions, especially the ones that came in, actionable information on addressing federal mandates. I think we did a pretty good job there, Joe, right?
Yeah, I hope so.
Saying this is what we need to do. The mandates, again, how to get it done. A lot of different resources for you. What's the impact of ZTA on legacy systems? It is universal, right, Joe? Every system's got to do it. Every system that's got to talk to every system has to be involved, right? Best practices. Hopefully we got that. Alternative security architectures other than zero trust. We're talking about zero trust specifically because it is mandated, right? We're not even going to explore, at least not here. The
whole idea with zero trust is the bridge beyond our other access control architectures.
Yep. And what is truly meant by zero trust is exactly the strategy is I don't trust anybody until you prove that you belong. And then I don't trust you to belong anywhere else except for the place that I put you. Right, Joe? That's it.
That is it. In a nutshell, that's very, very simple way of putting it.
Yeah, but I mean, that's pretty much it. We want to make sure that you are who you say you are. We are who you need to verify that I am who I say I am. And then once we're there, we have the ability to open up whatever gates are necessary for us to do our job and then get you out. So that nobody else can access your information.
You know, in previous sessions, one of the questions we had someone raised was, does this apply also to our NATO allies? Well, yeah, it does. It doesn't matter the location or who they are. And trust me, please. Well, you don't have to trust me. You barely know me. I'm just a face and a voice that you've never seen before on a webinar. Our allies and other government agencies that we work with around the world have the same problems we have.
That's a fact.
They understand it, and they're struggling to adopt the same modernization approaches with their own infrastructure. So if you're worried about, oh, I can't put a barrier up because I got to talk to somebody at NATO in France, that's not true.
That's right.
We're all in the same boat together.
We're all in the same boat. And the same problems all the way across the board. Being what's between the ears is the biggest problem we got most of the time.
Well, maybe you, Dave. But okay.
That's right. That is a fact. All right. As I mentioned earlier, you are under no obligation to purchase from anybody. But if you would like to purchase from somebody like DivIHN, you can, because they are a GSA contract holder and an 8A. And so they can certainly help you with that, and registered in the DRR, the Disaster Response Registry, as a vendor. So there you go. If you have any additional questions, please let us know. And we want to get you out of here on time. So if you do have any, pop it up there and we'll make sure we get to you. You will get a recap email with the briefing presentation, all the session docs that I just put it out there for you as well. And any updated information will be provided, as well as to a link to the video so that you can watch this over and over and over again and submit it for awards, and also one-on-one meetings if you would like to continue the conversation with anybody that's here. And I'm going to give you the main man who can come back on if you'd like to. And we had a chat here that said, Nadine says, very informative. Thank you very much, Nadine. You're awesome for mentioning that. And we appreciate you guys being here today. And you guys can get out, but thanks for joining us. And if you need to reach out to Matt, there's Matt's information. And the illustrious leader, Harold, is here as well. So if you need anything from these folks, you will get it, I promise. And we'll let you guys get out of here. Anybody else want to final comments? Go ahead.
My last comment is, anyone that's participated in the webinar today, if you would like to reach out to me specifically with any questions or explore any of this stuff further, just drop Matt an email and he'll link you directly to me.
Fantastic.
Be happy to chat with you.
Love that. Thanks for the great pictures, Joe.
You got it.
I'm always impressed, man. Every time you come and I see what you got cooking, I have a trouble photographing anything. So I appreciate what you do, and thanks for your expertise here.
You're all welcome. Thank you.
We'll get you guys out. Let me stop sharing this bad boy, and we shall see you next time.